Hi, and welcome to Second Rate Film School. I'm Andrew,
And I'm Jake.
and we are here today to talk about the finale to Better Call Saul, one of our favorite shows. I mean, at least mine. I don't want to presume you, but I'm going to assume yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that's a good assumption.
If you're talking about it, yes. Um, yeah, it was okay. No. Um, for perspective on this, I'm currently on the East Coast. Jake is still back on the West Coast. So I got to watch it a few hours before he did. So I just texted him saying, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god," and he had to wait to watch it, and I stayed up till 1 in the morning to hear what he had to say about it. That's how much I loved it, and I was super excited to hear what you had to say. So yeah,
Yeah, you actually remind me I have to cancel my AMC Plus account because I just got it. Just I signed up for the 7 day subscription just to watch the finale because I missed the encore. So and yes, um, yeah, but it was worth it.
yeah, one of the finest like 70-ish minutes. I don't know what the actual runtime is of television ever. Like, I mean, that was superb.
Yeah, this is like it's peak television. It capped off one of the best shows I've ever seen. Probably the best prequel ever. The best spinoff, maybe. I mean, I guess Frasier, if we're gonna count that, but maybe in terms of a dramatic show, a dramatic series, it's the only one that I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, the only technical spin-off shows that I think that most people enjoy are like this Frasier and then like The Simpsons. Like, yeah, oh, and NCIS also spin-off of a different show that no one remembers. Yes, I'm a 65-year-old lady. I like watching NCIS. But yeah, no, I think this is the best of them. I mean, I love Frasier, but like this is at least the best drama spinoff of all time.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought? I mean, I remember when they announced the show not too long after Breaking Bad ended, and obviously I gave them the benefit of the doubt and everything because they did Breaking Bad, but it was a thing of like, can they pull it off? It was a little strange to do a spinoff of that, but then by season one, I mean, it was pretty much an impeccable first season. Then once you got into, I think the latter half by season four, that's kind of when you realize that it was, I think, just as good as Breaking Bad. I mean, it
Yeah,
just I who would have thought? I mean, it's just a testament to Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould and everyone for being able to crack the idea and to execute a prequel to its fullest. And then they saw it through till the very end where I guess we'll go ahead where in terms of what you thought of it.
yeah, no. Guess just like the season in general, this shows you how great of writers they all are and storytellers because every episode went in a different direction that we're like, well, what the fuck are they gonna do now? So, I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you've seen the show, but like, when they do the mid-season finale, like, oh my god, Howard's killed. Where are we gonna go for this? Like, what's Lalo gonna happen? And then, oh my god, Lalo's killed in the immediate next episode. Oh fuck, what are we gonna do for like another 5 episodes? And then it's like, oh, Kim's gone. Oh, what are we gonna do for the remaining 3 episodes? And it was just like every episode was just keeping us on our toes, and each better than the last. And yeah, no, I mean the ending was great. I saw someone sum it up as there were 3 deaths in the final episode. Gene died, Saul died, and then Jimmy was able to lay to rest. Finally, they all had their 3 moments and plot points, and they all had their 3 goodbyes and deaths in a certain way you could look at it. And yeah, I couldn't have been happier with the ending of this show. That I don't think they could have done any better if they wanted to.
Yeah, well, for me, it was very unexpected because throughout the show, or at least throughout this season, getting towards the last half, I really thought they were going to just double down on the tragedy of Saul Goodman in terms of what Jimmy went through from season one onward. I really thought it was going to end where he just was Saul Goodman and he'd always be, even if he got caught, he would still be Saul Goodman. And that was that. And that's where I thought it was going at first, at least for the last half. But then, much to my surprise, pleasant surprise, he he redeems himself. He gets his soul back, and actually goes back to what was always there from the beginning of the show, where Jimmy was never a bad guy. I think Vince Gilligan best described him as like this rascal. He got into some trouble and everything, did some bad things, but he was a good guy at heart. He just got screwed over, and then things outside of his control led him to become Saul Goodman. And then, he grew worse himself, and he doubled down on that. But I was surprised to see him come out on top and see that he could change in the end. It was kind of like the reverse of Breaking Bad.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, no, it for me I then this shows you I'm not a great storyteller or as much a great writer compared to like Gould and Gilligan and all the writers. But like I kind of was my prediction was basically a less well written version of what happened of basically Kim somehow gets involved with Howard's death that gets revealed and he turns himself in and it was to show that he was not the shittiest person in the world. I did it a lot better than my initial interpretation. My interpretation was a little cheesy, I would say, in retrospect. Now seeing how it was done, but yeah, I kind of was hoping for a kind of redemption for him. That yeah, he was a fundamentally good guy who cut corners was how I always viewed Jimmy. He wanted to be the successful lawyer, but he didn't have the what it took for someone like a Chuck to get there legitimately. So he was always looking for the quick way to get there, and that's kind of what the Slip and Jimmy stuff was. Okay, that's gonna facilitate my getting that money from doing those slip and fall lawsuits facilitates me becoming a bartender because I can pay for bartending school. So he, instead of working legitimately hard for it, and it just kind of eventually he got in over his head with all this shit. He goes from doing slip and falls to being a mob lawyer and getting involved in a meth empire, and he was just way beyond his depth, but was still a fundamentally good person. And we kind of see that here with that, but they still had the balls to show it's kind of a still bleak ending to it, that he's in jail for the rest of his life or until he's 80 something years old. And yeah, it was brilliant, and
Yeah,
everyone who was in this should get a fucking Emmy this year for that episode.
it's a bittersweet ending. He gets his soul back. He does the right thing. The ironic thing is he still pulls a Saul Goodman maneuver where he does lie, but he does it for the right reason. Where he gets Kim off. He tries to he kind of lays down he gives the sacrifice plan, make sure Kim doesn't get in any trouble, and he takes the blame for it.
Yeah,
And
no.
he yeah.
Now, and that's actually an interesting thing because it seems from I've been heavily reading the Better Call Saul subreddit, and a lot of people are torn on his sacrifice in the end. Because I initially interpreted it that way was my favorite. I think my favorite moment of the entire episode is when he gives his sob story to the prosecutors, and Marie, that was very nice to see her. Some people said it was forced having her there. I enjoyed it, seeing her come back, and that was a great monologue she gave. But I viewed him torpedoing his deal was a callback to when he gives his sob story, and the prosecutor's like, "Oh, you think the jury's gonna buy that?" He's like, "Oh no, just one. That's all I need." That I interpreted is oh, he's doing this whole thing, trying to do the parallel. I built Walt up. Without me, plan wouldn't work, and it could be extrapolated. Oh, without me, Kim couldn't have done this. Some people point out grand juries, or is it not grand juries? Civil suits don't have juries, so I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. My entire law expertise comes from this show, so I don't know that. But some people view it as he's not trying to get her off. That he knows she might still be legally fucked up, but he saw that she was willing to turn herself in, and he realized, oh, I'm going to get out in 7 years, but I have nothing to get out to look forward to. I've lost Kim. I've lost everything that's important to me. that he then realized I have to own up to everything, and that's how he redeemed his soul. So it doesn't do anything for her that he did just lie to get her down there. So he could kind of like in his own way apologize by showing I'm owning up to it because she wanted him to turn himself in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Kim is going to get off scot free. I think she still has some trouble coming, but I do think now what Jimmy did it will lessen the blow to whatever happens. I think he took the brunt of it, or I mean, or it's still a little unclear there where it really. I mean, I think the point is like both are just in a good place now where they're able to just let go of all this stuff after what's been haunting them for the past or not haunting them for the past several years. So they're more honest people now with themselves and with each other, and even though they're not apart, they're kind of the closest they've been because of just the honesty of themselves. I mean, it was more honest than when they were together, when they were married, when they hatched that plan against Howard. It's just done in a very bittersweet way. And it was wonderful.
Yep. Now, do you think we're supposed to interpret, because that's another thing people have been debating, Kim not returning the finger guns when Saul does, or Jimmy at that point does it? Some people view that as it's a bittersweet thing where she's just like, we shouldn't be around each other because we're toxic, and that's the last time she's ever going to see him, or it's kind of she's just too sad because she knows that like the life they had was gone, and she's still going to come back and see him. I interpret it still as a positive. She's just like too sad, but it was a positive enough interaction prior to that she plans to come back and like doesn't hate him or anything like that. Because that seems to be tearing the fan base apart. I'm looking for a more optimistic ending with that, but I'm curious what you think.
No, I think it is meant to be more optimistic. That's what I got from it. Even though he does the finger guns, he's doing that classic Saul Goodman thing, but it's on his own terms now for just spun in a more positive way. And Kim just kind of acknowledges it, and they kind of part ways for who knows how long it might be, but I imagine she'll come back and see him again.
Yeah, I think it's like maybe every few months or once a year type thing.
Yeah.
No,
It just well, yeah, it shows that he's going to be okay in prison because he was Saul Goodman, and as we saw in that bus scene, they all seem to like that. So he's fine in prison. He's kind of doing the Cinnabon thing again. He's doing that. And then I mean there is hope. Maybe when he said 86 years, was it 86 or 87?
80, I think it was 87 years, and they're like, you'll probably be out in 30, so he'll be like in his 70s when he gets out. I think they say he's 40 something years old, because this is supposed to be 2010 apparently.
Right.
So he's
right.
40 something years old. So yeah, he could, if he keeps his nose clean, could be out in 30 years, and it's just supposed to represent that he's trying to turn the page. Some people are, I think, a little too negative now. He's like, yeah, he's gonna fall back into being Saul and all that, and like be doing shit. Yeah, I mean, I think there's always gonna be that personality trait there to an extent, but I see, yeah, he's gonna be doing the Cinnabon thing, making the bread in the commissary, and I see a world almost kind of like Andy Dufresne, doing taxes for the guards and Shawshank. He's helping people with legal advice and all that. Whether it's inmates or guards, and he's trying to be an honest person, is actually trying to help people. So yeah, I view it as a bittersweet. Yeah, he's in jail for basically the rest of his life, but this is the happy ending where he owns up to it and is no longer Slippin' Jimmy, Saul, and Eugene are all dead. It's just Jimmy McGill again. That's the whole point, I think, of this series has kind of been, we see it throughout the episode where he asks Mike, then Walt, like, if you had a time machine, what would you go back and change? And in their typical fashions, Mike, implies or says he doesn't want to go back. He would like to go back to stop his bribe. The first one, I'm not the best with the Breaking Bad dates. I assume the date he gave was when he gave his son the advice to take the bribe, which ultimately led to his murder. could have been the murder in general. But then he ultimately decides he doesn't want to be corrupt. And I think that sums up Mike. Mike is, when we get down to it, a very thuggish, evil person. Like, I know he tries claiming he has a moral code, but as we saw in Breaking Bad, he was fine helping liquefy a kid and working with neo Nazis and all that. Like, he was definitely better than a lot of these guys, but it was still terrible. And that's the nice scene we see with Nacho's father when he says, you're all the same. I think that definitely hit Mike to the core. And we saw moments like when he had to kill Werner in a few seasons back, where he realizes, I think, a little bit like, oh, I am a terrible like person. I've made horrible mistakes, and that he just very earnestly wants to have not done that. And then it's great. Walt is such a like snobbish like prick about science. He won't even entertain the idea of time travel being real. But yeah, Jim.
And then he doesn't even own up to his like greatest regret.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great scene because it's, both these men from the heads of their own shows in the same room, and neither man can admit to their greatest regret. It's just, but Jimmy in the end is different from Walt because, I guess with the whole conceit with Walt from the beginning, he was always like this egotistical prick deep down. He did these things because he liked them. He did them for himself.
Yeah.
But with Jimmy, it was always different. He was always like a good guy. He just, went down the wrong path. So that was just, it was a nice divergence. I thought they would go with kind of the irredeemable aspect again, but done through the more like tragic lens that they've been going for. But no, it wasn't like that at all. He changed. He did it. He actually owned up to these things, and it felt organic. It didn't feel like a thing strung together in the final episode. It is there throughout the final season.
Yeah.
It's kind of making that point because, think about it. Jimmy's life has been defined by these relationships, by Chuck, by Kim,
Howard, then Walter.
Yeah, and they're all in like all in a different way. He loved Chuck, even though Chuck didn't really respect him. He loved Kim, but his heart was always in the right place with those albums. And then eventually he gets with Walt again, and it's kind of it's almost the symmetry with the similar relationship with him and Walt later on. It's like these these older men who just don't respect what he does. Kind of gets involved in that same relationship. But yeah, it feels consistent. Where look, I think it still could have worked where he took that deal, and I still think the show could have worked if they did that because it is part of the show is this tragedy, but the fact that I've never seen a tragedy done where they come out in like a positive way at the end. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Yeah.
Usually it always ends in like a disaster, and it's always like a self-inflicted thing. But here it's the character actually turns his life around and realizes the error of his ways.
Yeah, because there's a version of this where I imagine where they show he takes the deal, and it's almost kind of like it going back to Shawshank. Like, you show he's living it up in the prison. He gets his mint chocolate chip ice cream, and all that. He's golfing and all that, and then he gets out, and Kim still wants nothing to do with him. Francesca's moved on, and he can't practice law anymore, and like, I can imagine a version of the show where it just shows he then has to go back to working as Cinnabon now, like in New Mexico, because like no one will hire him to do anything else, and that be just a completely bleak ending. But no, it's interesting that they went that route, and briefly going back to the time machine things, like, yeah, this is, I think, him kind of going back and trying to fix his mistakes with not handling Howard's death right with Kim. I think what the straw that broke the camel's back for her was he moved on way too quickly from that. We can see in the episode after that, they're going about their days, and she's fucking, twisted up inside, and, he's kind of like already moved it into the back burner. And I think, had he maybe shown more remorse or something, that maybe Kim wouldn't have left him. Who knows? But I think, at least in his mind, that was him going back to fix that mistake. And it's interesting to show across that episode how he evolved even in those interactions, because when he had the conversation with Mike, he's just like, yeah, I just want to make money. And then
Yeah.
when he goes back and when he then is with Walt, his regrets a little bit more realistic. He's like, yeah, I fucked up my knee. So the series running um, joke about his knee being bad, in his first introduction in Breaking Bad, he mentions, hey, my knees are bad. I have to get up. Like, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh no, he actually did hurt his knee. Um, Nice to see the realization of why that is there. He wanted to fix that young mistake, but it shows that his greatest mistake in life was a sore knee, not I got a man killed who he got shot in the head in my living room. Maybe I could go back and not do that, or hey, I got the love of my life to leave me. So he was still immature at the time. And then we see he finally matures by the very end of it to, torpedo his own deal.
Yeah, it's a cool little arc. It reminds me of like a, I don't know, like a Christmas Carol kind of. I don't know.
Kind of.
It's hard to describe, but that's what it kind of reminded me of. I just, um, yeah, kind of like this Frank Capra thing too. The whole time machine element and kind of look and wanting to fix that one mistake is very interesting. It's yeah, it's
I
very very unexpected.
I have an elaboration, I think, from that then. One thing I noticed is the scene with Chuck. People have pointed out that actually takes place the day before the premiere or the pilot of Better Call Saul, because in it he says, in the flashback, he says, I'll try and get the Financial Times for you. I hear they now carry it. I'll see you tomorrow. And then the next day is the first episode of Better Call Saul. And he's like, hey, I got you the Financial Times. And Chuck was surprised in that episode. Um, it's very interesting that they pick that date and not just a random other date, because in there you see Chuck seems to be legit wanting to connect with Jimmy,
Yeah,
and he seems legit interested in his clients, and he says, they all deserve the same care that anyone gets, and Jimmy immediately throws it back in his face, and then that's when Chuck does the jibe at him, saying, "Oh, just steal that from a motel," and they fall back in their rut. That, and then the scene ends with Chuck walking away and with his copy of the time machine. That I'm like, oh wow, that was, I think I viewed it as Chuck trying to have his own time machine moment of he kind of felt bad for all these years that he's hated Jimmy and all that, and now in his lowest time in life, Jimmy's helping him, that he was like, maybe I should be nice to him, and Jimmy threw that in his face, and then he fell back into the old routine, and then we get to Better Call Saul as we know it, that maybe had the two of them sat down and had their conversation, none of this would have happened, that they could have been different. But going for your Christmas Carol metaphor, he's the last one. He's Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. I kind of think that maybe that's a representation of Jimmy would have been like, Chuck was alone, bitter, and had no one around him.
right.
If he didn't take the or if he chose to take the deal, he would have had no one around him and be basically a prisoner of his own, choosing after that.
That's what I thought was going to happen. I thought, but no, no, that's actually an interesting point. I think that makes sense too in the placement of it, because what happens in season one, that a scene like that could not have happened during that afterwards, because we know what happens there between them. So yeah, that's an interesting observation. So kind of interesting how it loops back to the very beginning of the show. It's yeah, yeah, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's cool that again they structure it as Jimmy wants money with Mike. Then a little down the line, we see him being like, "Oh, no, I do have a regret I want to fix, but it's still a very selfish thing." And then he doesn't have that conversation there, but it still serves in that way that we see where he's kind of evolved to where like, or kind of, I guess because it's that one's the earliest one, where he had originally devolved from in the other ones of he was trying to be an honest lawyer there. He was pissed that he could only get those types of clients, but he wasn't the scumbag we knew he would become later on. So it's very interesting that even though chronologically that was the earliest flashback, it came after a flashback to an event we did not see within the show and a flashback from a previous show. Yeah, very interesting of how it, even though it came at a different timeline point, it represented the final stage of it.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. How he kind of those different scenes shows like it shows that he has like good in him still.
Yeah,
He's kind of slowly, even though it's minuscule, it shows that he was never a static character. He was never always like this. What's interesting about because I'm rewatching Breaking Bad right now, and I'm on the Saul stuff. Obviously, like both stand on their own. Excuse me, perfectly. Um, because when you watch Breaking Bad, you can just view it as Saul Goodman as a scumbag lawyer. But I will say it is like it's very hard to not think of Better Call, Saul, especially now, like having watched finished the show, watching Saul and Breaking Bad. It's really hard to separate the two because now I know what's going to happen to him, like who he really is, how this Saul Goodman really is. Just it's an act. It's like to compensate for this inner pain. It's like the shell. But you could do both. You could just watch Breaking Bad as is, but it's one of the reasons why it's like such a great prequel.
yeah.
It stand on its own, but if you want to, it can enhance what's already there.
Yeah, no, I mean I have to watch through Breaking Bad. I knew I wanted to wait to watch it again. Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting because it forever will change how you watch Breaking Bad. Because one, not only yes, do you now know where Saul had been prior to this. Like you said, that Saul Goodman was just an act, and like basically his heart being broken made him become this full fucking time. But we also know where it's going, obviously, with part of the show being a sequel to Breaking Bad.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah.
So I mean, it's gonna be very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know the two can stand up on their own, but yeah, it's gonna be a little bit more difficult rewatching Breaking Bad for me, at least, where it's like, look at the funny lawyer guy, and it's like, oh, this is an incredibly tragic character who has had horrible, horrible things happen to him in life. So it definitely is gonna shade my viewing of Saul and Breaking Bad. But no, I mean, I think the two of these and El Camino as well. We don't want to forget that existed in the Breaking Bad averse. All really melded together, and people are trying to talk about the timeline of the show, and it's very great how nebulous it is, but they do include enough details to make you realize what certain things are. Uh, Apparently, he was only in like Omaha, Nebraska for like 6 months, I guess.
Yeah. That's what I've seen. It's only a few months, which is pretty surprising. I thought it was years,
Yeah,
but I guess which if it's true, that makes it more interesting because it shows us how he couldn't stand being
normal
Gene.
for 6 months, for not even a year.
Yeah, I mean that makes it kind of more interesting if that's true.
Yeah, no,
Either way, it's interesting, but
I
that's an
think it
interesting.
is because he meant they mention on the phone when he's talking with Kim that it's been 6 years since they talked. The divorce papers show 2004 on the like paper, so 6 years plus of 2004 gets us to 2010. We know apparently Breaking Bad ends in 2010 based on canonically we know what Walter White's birthday is, and we know that all of Breaking Bad takes place over a year, and then fast forward another year for the finale. So it's like, yeah, that was apparently September of 2010. This is end of 2010, early 2011 at the latest, I guess. So
Yep.
Walter White's been dead for a few months. So yeah, people are like, "Wow, Marie, it was really emotional." It's like it's been like 4 months since Walt died, and like like under a year, a little over a year since Hank died. Like this has been a pretty stressful couple of years for everyone.
No, yeah, I like seeing. Well, going back to your point, how I've never seen something be a prequel and a sequel. I mean, Godfather Part Two is a sequel and a prequel,
Yeah,
but this is a prequel and a sequel, if that makes sense. And that's
yeah.
I didn't expect. I mean, I know we always got those black and white Gene scenes at the beginning of all the other seasons, but it's just so interesting how the choice of doing that, how they wrapped everything up at the same time, and
Also a midquel too, part of it,
how.
because we're seeing scenes in the Breaking Bad timeline that we had never seen. So like we're seeing what happens when they go in the camper, And then
Oh, right.
we're seeing like Kim talking to Jesse right after all this. No,
That
yeah,
was a great scene.
yeah, no, but no, sorry to interrupt. But like, yeah, it's very unique how they wove that tapestry so well. I mean, I had a feeling we were gonna get some Cranston and Jesse. Like, I did not think we were gonna get as much as we did. That was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, well, it works because those scenes are there to they're, they're a means to tell Saul's story in terms of where his character is at that time. Like when Walt and Jesse, when they appear in what it's like the third to last episode in the episode titled Breaking Bad, that whole episode is meant to be like Saul's like lowest point where he's hit rock bottom. Like his choice with Walter White is when he really that's when he sinks at his lowest and when he can't really come back from that anymore. I mean, he does, but like that he crosses like all the other lines. I mean, beyond like Howard and everything, and he just doubles down on that. And then it all of course it sets up everything that happens in the last episode. I mean, you have to dramatize that. We can't because we can't just assume everyone's seen Breaking Bad. You have to see what Walt and Jesse did to Saul so he could plead his sob story in the final episode. But they're all there to service Saul's story. It doesn't feel like fan tacked on fan service or anything like that. And the same when that scene with Jesse and Kim, that also takes place, I think, in that when Saul first shows up in season 2, and it's so fitting that Kim's the one to give the seal of approval of Saul to Jesse to ultimately like use him as their lawyer. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, like I had faith in them that they wouldn't make it fan servicey. I mean, after watching El Camino and seeing how they were able to bring Walt and Mike back for flashbacks, and make it feel very natural, I had the utmost faith in the creative team behind this. That listen, if Walt and Jesse are going to be in this somehow, it's not just going to be some BS. Look at it's the guys you like. It's gonna be for something important. It's like, yeah, it's very interesting watching that Breaking Bad scene, where now we get in the trailer and he's kind of like worming his way into them already, and
Yeah, yeah,
even though he just had a gun shoved in his head and was put in front of a grave, he knows like, oh, I know these two guys. They're marks for me now. I can weasel my way. It's like, oh yeah, it's bad back there. Oh yeah, at least you're not like on your bad knees and all that, and like cracking jokes almost with them that he knows. He's like, oh, I can take advantage of these two and make a shit ton of money, and that's very fascinating to have seen that perspective from it.
also fascinating too, just to tell it from Saul's perspective, that episode, because I I finished season 2 of Breaking Bad recently, and going back to watch his first episode, now watching Better Call Saul, it's kind of interesting how they kind of tucked in between there, where Saul chose to to make Walter White a client and everything. That moment he walks into the high school, like I know in Breaking Bad it's sort of like he's being like this kind of sneaky guy, but in the context of Better Call Saul, it's a thing where Mike advises him, hey, don't get involved with this guy. He's bad news. But, it can't get out of Saul's head. He sees it as a good opportunity. It's slipping Jimmy. And then he fully commits to it. Once he walks in that school, his life is never going to be the same. Like that's his rock bottom. And that's when he really can't turn back.
Yeah.
So it was great. It's a very interesting moment just seeing it from the other perspective now. So when you see him walk into that school in Breaking Bad, obviously it stands on its own because again, you just see Saul Goodman as this scumbag lawyer for kind of blackmailing Walt. But you can also see it as, where this guy's been coming from too. I mean, you could do both or, yeah. Well, the point is it stands on its own, which is important.
Yeah, no. And that's the thing, some people are like torn with Marie's inclusion. That some people say if you're a Better Call Saul fan only, it doesn't make sense to see her and have an impassioned speech about like Hank, a character who we saw only in like 2 episodes, I believe, in Better Call Saul. That doesn't make sense. That this is strictly for the Breaking Bad people, and I mean, first partially I mean, yes, it. I guess if you only watch Better Call Saul, it doesn't make sense. I can't imagine that the people who watch Better Call Saul, it's got to be a minority, have not watched Breaking Bad. Be actually very interested to see like how small of that Venn or how big that Venn diagram would be. But I think it even works in that context because Hank did reference his wife both times we or every time we see her, like they make reference, and it's important to see that his involvement with Walt has had horrible consequences. And really, even in the Breaking Bad world, um, the negative aspects of Walt becoming a meth kingpin were always limited to the people we actually see on screen. We never really talk about the oh my god, Walt is selling a shit ton of meth to like Eastern Europe. Like it's like that's a thing kind of gets glossed over, but he's just got like Eastern Europe hooked on meth apparently. But we view it like oh my god, he got Uncle Hank killed. Oh my, his son hates him and all that. And I mean, because it's a show about a man who's doing this for his family, it makes sense. So I think it worked in here that we have the personal thing of hey, you got involved in these people, and here's two federal agents' wives who were brutally murdered because you wanted to get rich. And I think it, even if you didn't watch it, it still works. I think it's if you did watch Breaking Bad, it's an extra like garnish on the plate to make it even that much better.
Mm-hmm. I mean, kind of thing. Maybe they could have done a thing where they not show Hank's death or anything because Saul wasn't there, but maybe mention on the news or something, maybe to at least set that up first. Because in the context of Better Call Saul, we did when did we see them? Was it season 5?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
Because
maybe I
they're
mean I
with
have
when Lalo has been arrested, like they're involved in like it. So like you see him I think twice in this fifth season.
okay. Well, maybe it couldn't have hurt to maybe bring that back again. Um, maybe you see it in like a newspaper or something, one of like the marshal is reading on the plane or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it. I mean, maybe you bring him one more time in season 6, like when they're dealing with the whole Lalo skip bail and like they're showing the episode where it's showing people are starting to avoid him because they know he's a mob connected lawyer now. You can see like Hank and Gomi giving him shit one more time, and then like there's some reference to it. Maybe that's the thing that Carol Burnett sees. She's like seeing clips or whatever online, or you just like see like it shows she has other news articles up, and it's like federal agents' bodies recovered because they would have been recovered like 4 months ago in that timeline.
Yeah, they could have done that. Yeah, so maybe that's like a one little slight chip to the Lamborghini, I would call it. Maybe you don't really notice it that much. It's fine.
It's
I
a
mean,
chip on the bottom of the bumper that.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I guess because we don't want to go too long on this. We don't want to just keep saying it's great, it's great. I get we should start wrapping up. Where do we want to place Better Call Saul? Do we want to like try and say if it's as good as Breaking Bad or better potentially?
I at the very like it's just as good at the very least. I'm confident in saying that. I mean, this is one of the best shows I've ever seen. If I had never watched Breaking Bad, I would still say that. Um, is it better than Breaking Bad? I think it's possible. I think it's debatable. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not real ready to make that. I have to go back and rewatch Breaking Bad to see. Right now, they're just very different shows. Breaking Bad is kind of like it's kind of like a page turner, like reading like a Stephen King book, where it's like, holy shit, I can't wait to see what's next. Whereas with Better Call Saul is kind of like reading Charles Dickens, where something that you kind of take your time with more. They're just very different beasts. But in terms of execution, I think that remains to be seen. But I think the fact that we're even entertaining the idea is a real testament to Better Call Saul. The fact that it stands on its own so well.
yeah. I from my perspective, one, I was Johnny Come Lately to Better Calls or Breaking Bad. I didn't watch it until it was off. Um, just I don't know why I was watching AMC at the time. I mean, hell, I was watching Rubicon over this over Breaking Bad. Like that is a fucking weird choice to make to miss Breaking Bad when it aired. So my viewpoint on that show is different because I marathon that. I really enjoyed it, of course. Where Better Call Saul, I came in on season two, I believe. I think.
Oh, you
Um,
did. Okay.
yeah, I two or three. I cannot honestly recall. I know I was watching it season four because you and me had to deal with a bunch of bullshit to watch it, and I remember that vividly. Um, so for the either way, for the vast majority of Saul, I was watching it live. So I think being able to savor it and wait for the week to week, month to month, year to year for seasons helped me enjoy it, savoring it a little more. I will say I think I do enjoy it more, and I think what allows me to say that is I watched El Camino soon as it dropped. Like I stayed up to midnight to watch that, like when it first dropped on Netflix. I was so excited, and I really enjoyed it. But I don't know if I'll necessarily need to go back to watch it again. So watching something else brand new in the Breaking Bad universe and being just like, yeah, it's good. I really enjoyed it, but not feeling as positive about that as I do Saul. I think personally, I would say I enjoy it more than Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Your mileage may
Yeah.
vary, maybe objectively speaking. It's not, I don't know what the critics and audience will say 5, 10 years down the line, but as of right now, I personally liked it better.
Yeah. Objectively speaking, I think it'll hold up against Breaking Bad at the very least. I think they'll
Yeah.
still be talked about in equal measure. Um,
I mean, someone
I mean,
summed up like this is like the Godfather 1 and 2 of television, basically.
it kind of is. It's just amazing over how many years? What, 14 years this has
Started
been, and it
like
just
'08, I think, right?
oh 08. Yeah, I remember when it came out, Breaking Bad, and then it's just the consistency and quality. I mean, who would have thought a spinoff of on Saul Goodman would have been this good? At the time, you're just hoping they don't screw it up. But the fact that it's this like not only a great show, but one of the best shows ever. It's just an impeccable show
Yeah,
from
and
start to finish.
yeah, and I mean, I Jake famously doesn't watch TV shows too often. That's always anytime me or Jacob say, "Hey, you should watch this." He's like, "Yeah, I'm sure it's great." But I do watch a lot of TV shows, and some of my other favorite shows are For All Mankind and The Boys, which were all around this same time. I really don't know what the hell I'm gonna watch now that they're all done. But I really enjoyed those seasons when they were on this season or whatever, and I'm like, wow, those were very enjoyable finales. And then I went on with my life. Versus this, I was fucking antsy for the rest of the goddamn night, and like I said, stayed up to 1 a.m. to hear what Jake's opinion on it was. And it's like that was not the feeling I had for either of those other shows. So, I mean, it just really, I guess, exemplifies that to me. Like, oh my god, this is one of the best shows ever, and the fact I will never be able to watch another new episode of Better Call Saul is heartbreaking to me.
Yeah. But we could always rewatch it, but experiencing it for the first time and
Yeah,
everything, I mean, that's what great art does, to your point about it sticking with you. And I think that's why it'll stand the test of time. Like Better Call Saul ending is kind of like the end of an era for me where I think I mentioned this to you, where it comes from that era of like the golden age of television, which I think has been long over, where it was just about great writing and it really just best exemplified what the format of TV could do. And we don't really get that anymore. Now it's quote unquote content and everything is needlessly stretched out and no one has any idea how to write a TV show. But with this was like the vestige of that era. And now it's over. So
yeah. No, I
I
mean,
can't I can't think of any other TV show that's going to be this good. I mean, I can't. I mean, not that it can't happen, but good luck because at the very least, yeah, like I said, this is the end of an era, and I'm glad you know, I was there till from the beginning to end. It was a great experience.
yeah. No, I'm sad I joined on a little late for Breaking Bad, but I'm glad I was here for this. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that has I have the utmost respect for Vince Gilligan, Peter Gold, and like all the other team members of the Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul verse that they're like, no, we're done. It's like we don't have any more stories we want to tell. You can't be a one trick pony. Vince Gilligan said you can't keep betting it on black and hoping that it turns out well. That they're walking away from this incredibly lucrative. I mean, like, don't tell me if they said we're gonna do a Huel spinoff that AMC wouldn't greenlight that immediately at this point. But they have the respect for the story and the characters to be like, no, that would be a bad idea to do anything else, and we have no more stories. So I mean, like, what more can we like? Do we need to see a Gus storyline? Not really. I mean, I'm sure it would be good, but like, if,
No, I
if
mean,
they wanted to come back and do it, I'm sure it'd be good. But like, I want them to actually want to do it, and I don't think that's gonna happen. And I'm fine with that. I'm bitter. It's a bittersweet thing that we won't get any more of these characters, but I'm content with that.
oh, me too. Look, whatever they want to do. If they feel like it's over, it's over. But if they want to come back and say, "Hey, let's do a Lyle spinoff," I'll fucking watch it from day one. Like I'm there, man. Like at this point, it was like, yeah, we didn't need a Saul spinoff either, and look what happened. And it's like these guys have just earned just all of there is no reason to doubt them at this point. If it's the same team and they say they want to tell a story, go ahead. You just know it's going to be great. It's not going to be some sort of cynical, cash grab. It's going to be something genuine, like it has been over these past 14 years.
Yeah, no, I'll wrap up on this. I'm always reminded of the integrity of Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale when they come to the Back to the Future franchise, my favorite movies of all time. When they said we're never going to make a fourth one, and they've made it ironclad that Universal can never get their mitts on it, and are trying to figure out how to tie it up in their wills that their children and their grandchildren can't allow a fourth one to be made. And god damn it, that is the most integrity I've ever seen in this industry. And I think that's the kind of integrity we're gonna see here with this team. That, like, you know what, if we don't have a story to tell, we're not gonna do it. And by God, I can respect the hell out of that. They're putting the art over the profits, and that's something you really really don't see too often.
Yeah, story's done. The story's done. It's up. It's either way. It's on their terms, and I trust it no matter what.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we will be wrapping this up now. So we hope you enjoyed hearing us talking about Better Call Saul.
All right. Bye, Saul.
Watch the show.
Yeah, if you haven't watched it, please do.
Yeah, it's probably weird if they hadn't, but whatever. Good night, everybody.